The benefits to study group, to me, really have to do with why I think students should work together. And the basic reason I think students should work together is that it gives them a chance to make the mistakes they're going to make while they're learning something. I see working together in study groups really the same way that I see editing papers in, say, an English class. When I think about learning something, I think about learning something as just the series of errors that you make in between what you know now and where you're going to be when you understand it. And alone in your room with your stuffed animals, you just can't get that because they don't reply. Study groups formed on your own, formed through the Science Learning Center, study groups formed out in the diag, for all that matter. Working with other people has a generic benefit.
Students who participate in study groups find that have told me that it's a very useful way to make sure that the time they spend studying is used well and really benefits them in a maximal way. All students at the University of Michigan are very busy people. They have many demands on their time, and consequently, they need to make sure that the time they spend on each activity is spent well.
Other benefits that I think are really important that study groups offer to students are that it gives students an opportunity to share their ideas with one another and to do it in an environment that's very comfortable. I think that students who attend large lectures and even discussion sections that have 25 or 30 students find it very intimidating, particularly in their first year, to be able to ask questions when they feel like other students maybe won't have that same question or the question will be perceived as dumb. And so study groups are a great way for them to bond with other students in the class and really enjoy an environment where they feel comfortable and they can ask their questions and know that the students will really support them and want to help them in a genuine way. The study group leader is not supposed to be answering questions or explaining, but rather that they should be posing questions to the group.
One of the ways I draw out the knowledge that study group members bring to the study group is at the beginning of each session, I ask them what topics they've covered, and then after we make a list of those, I'll have them say as much as they know about the topic. And I'll say, even if you're not sure, that's fine. This is a learning process. I stress that. Come up to the board and show me what you know about this mechanism. Even if you don't know, it's fine. We'll check it together. And I found that that's really helped to draw out their knowledge.
Sometimes you have a study group that is very quiet and some people are shy. Sometimes it's just one or two of the students are very shy. When the whole study group is being very quiet, I like to do one of two things: either use a handout that I have, because they're not asking questions, they're not inquisitive about the topics or difficulties that they're having. So I like to sort of test what they know, and then that generally opens up discussion, because one of the main reasons that people are shy is that they don't really know what they don't know.
So it usually becomes apparent of what people know and what people don't know. Just from the way they talk, I would usually, like if a member mentions a certain term many times, like assisted ionization, a certain member would say assisted ionization a lot, so I would know that that person knows all about assisted ionization. So if it ever comes up in a problem, then I would maybe call in the member to explain that. I would say, can you draw the resonance structure? Sometimes I just have to work with it. I just have to tell myself, okay, that person does not want to come to the board and speak, so when I call on them, I will ask them to speak from their seat, but not to come to the board. And then their knowledge comes out.
I think the other thing that we want leaders to do is to ask study group members to evaluate each other's responses. So if somebody gives an answer to a question that's been posed, asking another student to say, well, do you think that person's correct? Yes or no, and why? And make sure that they can explain the rationale given for that answer and why it's correct. And in that way, we can ensure that the students are using higher order thinking skills and really practicing the reasoning skills that they're going to need in the course and on the exams.
When did we do the thing with Sky and Kickoff?
I think that a study group leader needs to remember that their chief role and responsibility is that of a facilitator. And so the majority of talking in a study group should really be done by the study group members.
I think the most important thing I've learned as a study group leader has to be that teaching is the greatest way to learn. And so getting students to teach each other is the most beneficial thing for them.
Study group leaders are really not trying to do something particular for the students. They're trying to help the students do what they need to do in order to learn the material. There isn't a way that you can stand in front of a group of students and lecture them and teach them the material, force that stuff into their brains. What you have to do is try and facilitate the processes in a study group that help students to really learn. So things that you have to be very careful to avoid include telling people how to do all the questions that they've come to get the answers for. If you do that, they'll be very happy with you. They'll get their answers, they'll leave, they'll turn their homework in and say you're a great study group leader. And then they will fail the exams. And that's clearly not what you want to have happen.
I tend to talk during a study group no more than 10 or 15% of the time. And it's essentially only to ask more questions in response to answers.
It's probably about 75% them and a quarter me. I mean, the first couple of weeks you're going to have to talk a little more just to get everyone engaged and kind of establish group dynamics.
I would say maybe 10 to 20% of the time I talk. The rest of the time they work amongst themselves and they try to work out problems. When I see that something is just blatantly not right, something is not working, they're missing a major concept that I know they should be talking about, then I step in and I bring it up in conversation. And I may say a couple sentences about the concept and I may put something on the board. Sometimes they start talking about their families or their friends or the parties they went to, and the conversation totally wanders off. And that's when I step in and I say, let's focus on the orgo because you have an exam coming up.
We also want leaders who will be able to summarize what's been said in the study group in a way that kind of brings all of the information together at the end, or better yet, ask the students to do the summary for them and then perhaps encourages others to chip in if there's any gaps in that knowledge.
It's hard to get students to contribute an idea when they're unsure of the answer. The biggest challenges of being a study group leader are maintaining both a jovial atmosphere, one where students are willing to contribute, and encouraging a learning environment, something where they can really see the answers and work out the problems for themselves. The reason I say that is when you want an environment where everyone's going to contribute, it's easiest to have that environment if the students are contributing knowing that they're going to be right. But what's better for learning is if they contribute all their ideas, even if it's wrong.
To get the members engaged with each other, I avoid answering questions. Sometimes I just plain don't know the answer, and that, gets the discussion going really well. If I simply don't know what to say, they're going to look for the answer between themselves.
As long as you establish early on that you're not the primary resource to be getting answers from, and you always try to turn the questions back to the group. And I mean, really, a lot of it is about knowing how to ask the right questions about it and getting responses from them.
it starts at the very first session. I think when leaders take the time to get to know their members by doing an icebreaker activity or just handing out name tags at the first session and learning everybody's name, and giving the members an opportunity to get to know one another and just spending some time socializing, I think is really critical. And not just at the first meeting.
In order to make a study group successful, there are a couple different components that have to be involved. The first is understanding the idea that it is a study group, so that I don't play the role of a GSI or a professor, and that the idea of a peer facilitated study group leader where the students are doing most of the learning through each other. So that's absolutely essential, to have student involvement, understand you're not just an office hour or an open discussion where students can just pop you with questions and you'll just answer them on the board.
Active participation of the members involved, and this just doesn't mean that they show up to every section. I expect my members to come with questions prepared. In addition to the activities that I plan for them, I think also there has to be a relationship with the people in the group to be really successful. Sometimes you will have shyer people in the group, but as long as there's a balance.
The students are there and they're spending extra time on the material. So that's 2 hours of studying each week. Well, really, it can only translate into better grades. A successful study group occurs just when one student can get one more question right than they normally would, or one student can master one concept better than they usually did.
So learning how to do this, learning how to analyze problems collectively, how to propose solutions and have other people criticize them, how to criticize the approach that other people are taking, and I don't mean in a negative way, but in a critical way, in a way that asks whether we can really be sure that it's right. Learning how to do that is a great thing to do, and a study group provides a first kind of opportunity to do that.
So the favorite phrase is when students talk about, quote, those leaders have the authority of recent experience. I love that phrase, the authority of recent experience. They know that they've been students in that course. There's a sense that they have really practical advice about thinking about the course. There's a difference in the way you learn when you need to make an explanation compared with the difference in the way you learn if what you're trying to do is gain personal knowledge. And on a test, it's all explanation.